Hello, romance loves. My name is Sarah Gomez, and you're listening to Romancing the Story, a podcast centered around romance writing, reading, and finding love in story structure. I have to apologize for my voice in this episode. I'm getting over a head cold, but I am on the mend. We're at episode number 17, and today we talk to Raquel about book ambassadors, content creation, and learning to be fearless. We reference several books and resources throughout the episode. I have cited sources and dropped those links in the notes of the episode. The Amazon links will use our affiliate link, and if you get a chance, be sure to use it to help the podcast. With that said, let's jump right into the episode. Welcome, author, self-publishing mentor, and speaker, Raquel. Yay!
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk romance.
Yes, like I said, it's the season of love, right?
Oh, yes, it's February. So
of course.
There's just a whole lot of Cupid stuff going on in this month.
Exactly. Or for other people, that's singles awareness, right?
Or, yes, single awareness day. Yes, I spent many years in the single awareness day.
We kind of mentioned it earlier. I know we were talking a little quickly about it, but I've always had the pleasure of running into you during like the same writers conference and authors events. And I know you have such a passion for helping authors bring their books to life.
I love getting to go to all the same conferences as you and stuff. It's always fun.
Oh, I know. It's always a blast. So you've been in the publishing industry for 11 years, right?
Yes, 12 now.
Oh my gosh.
This is the 12th year.
That's
I don't
amazing.
know how that happened.
I know. That's incredible. And I know you teach all kinds of subjects, specifically geared towards like indie authors.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So can you tell listeners a little bit more about who you are and your areas of expertise?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an editor, author, book marketer, speaker, self-publishing mentor, blogger. Basically, if it has anything to do with the book world, I somehow have my hands in it. So I absolutely love working one-on-one with authors. It's just been my dream job since I was 16. And I really my main expertise is self-publishing. I used to do some stuff with traditional, but I moved out of that a few years ago to focus in on the indie author world. It's what I love. It's how I publish. So it just made sense for me to help as many new and even veteran self-publishing authors as much as possible. But I love helping the newbies. I love doing the hand holding and walking them through this crazy process from an idea scribbled on a napkin to holding your copy in your hands for the first time. I love that process.
And I think you're so good at it. And I think that's such an underutilized talent because half of it is writing the book. The other half is selling the book, right? And marketing it, getting it up.
Writers aren't marketers unless there's some type of unicorn. And it's just so sad because they'll get to the marketing part and they're like, you know what? I'm just gonna not do this because it's so overwhelming. And so I try really hard to teach people how to have a blast with marketing and how to make it fun. I'm not interested in forcing you to be on Twitter if you hate Twitter, or be on Facebook if you hate Facebook, or do an email newsletter, even though everyone says to do it, if you hate it. I'm interested in finding methods that make publishing fun for you and try to eliminate as much anxiety as possible. Yes, if I can do it, anybody can do it, because I didn't know how. I knew zilch. So it's just kind of funny because I'll have authors come to me all the time like, well, you know so much, you know how to do all this stuff. And I'm like, but I didn't. I had no idea what I was doing. I had to do the trial and error and the research and the questions and all of that. I had to learn from scratch. So, yeah.
So you are just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to marketing, because you've seen it firsthand and you learned yourself.
I did. I just went ahead and made all the mistakes for everybody else.
Perfect.
So that they wouldn't do the same stupid things that I did. I'm like, that's why if you ever see me talk about don't do this, 9 times out of 10 it's because I already did it. And so I'm trying to tell you, please don't do this stupid thing that I did. Please.
And you use that knowledge now to help you run an award-winning blog, right?
Yes.
For new and established authors.
Yes, I love my blog. I love blogging. I've been doing it for so long. Since 2013, actually, I've been blogging. So I've had a ton of fun watching it grow because when it first started, it was book reviews and grammar. That's what it was.
Wow.
And of course, I've rebranded and I don't do that anymore. It's all about self-publishing and writing and marketing. And I like to sneak in a lot of motivational stuff, mainly in my newsletter first, and then I'll move it over to my blog. But anything that helps encourage authors, you'll find on my blog as well.
So we want to talk a little bit about romance today.
Yes, please.
Oh, yes. Please. So, and you do talk about all genres. So
yes, I do.
Open-ended a little bit.
I try to do as many different genres as I can because I read and edit in so many genres. I write in so many genres. I am not a pigeonholed writer. Like the best way to describe it is my husband saying to me, and I quote, "I love that you will send me a romantic love poem in the same week that you asked me to read a chapter about a cannibal." He's like, "I don't know how you do that." I'm like, "I don't know." But that's why I try to talk about romance, science fiction, self-help, memoirs, whatever, because that's how I read. That's how I write.
I love it. I love how that's how your brain functions. Because sometimes I do that too. Like I'm like, I want to watch a rom-com, but then the same time, I'm like, I kind of want to watch just true crime about the serial killer,
Exactly. Just let me be weird. Okay. Exactly. Just let me be my weird self and let me do what I want to do. Okay. That's all I'm asking.
With the romance novels are undeniably one of the most popular genres of fiction. And I will list my sources in the show notes.
Highest paid as well. Number one.
So it's estimated to be like a $1.44 billion industry with also including self-publishing titles.
Yes.
What can romance authors do to help kind of boost their books?
Well, the first thing is you just found kind of like the big conundrum, right? Mm-hmm. It's the most popular genre. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that means your competition is through the roof crazy. It's really hard because you're competing with the most popular genre. So you have to, first of all, find a way to completely set yourself apart. And that's where subgenres come into play. And I'm pretty sure your audience knows this, but I do wonder like how deep they've gone. Amazon gives us all these subgenres and keywords and all sorts of things. So like there isn't just romance and there isn't just even like you can niche down. Oh, okay, well, I write romantic suspense. Okay, cool. But then there's like a whole other genre, several genres under that. Do you have is your protagonist a woman who is a citizen sleuth? Okay, great. Now you're like really niching down, but she also has this sexy detective that she's in love with, right? So now you have, okay, cool. Now we've niched down. Then, with romance, you have a whole other conversation of clean and wholesome, mm-hmm. erotica, mm-hmm. happy endings, open endings. You have that whole mess too. So you have got to niche down if you want to stand out, because one of the mistakes I see is when someone will say, I'm a romance author. There's just like a billion subgenres underneath that. So you need to find out precisely what kind of romance author you are. Are you historical romance? Are you a historical fiction romance novelist? Great. Now niche down even more, because then you have within that, like Amish romance is a big deal. That's really specific. Be specific. Don't say I'm a romance novelist. Say I write Amish romance. Okay, now we've niched down. So I think that's the first thing you got to work on. You have to really figure out precisely what your genre is. Get as specific as you can. That's going to help you stand out in the competition, because I would rather compete with, the romantic suspense detective, whatever, happy ending. That's really specific than just romance. I mean, that's you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of ebooks alone. Mm-hmm. Within that genre. So I'd rather compete with like a couple thousand ebooks in that genre, 10,000 ebooks instead of 100,000. You see the difference?
Exactly.
So that's the first thing that's got to happen. Have you ever noticed that before where it's too general?
I have. And actually, I was going to mention that because I was looking on Amazon the other day, and sometimes I read a blurb of something and I look at it and I'm like, I can't tell exactly
Yeah,
what it has in it, you know?
Mhm.
And I noticed one of the ones I was looking at actually had medical fiction on it. So it kind of gave me an idea of with the romance within the romance category. So I was like,
Right.
okay, so I know it like takes place at a hospital, or at least it involves some kind of doctor nurse kind of something there. So it has
That's a
medical.
niche. Right.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
And I
Perfect.
appreciated that because I was like, okay, well, now I kind of know a little bit more about it. So I can kind of dive in and I'm kind of interested in it now.
Yeah. And the blurb, I've always said that the hardest part is not writing the book, it's writing your blurb.
Yes.
And the second hardest part still isn't writing your book, it's getting reviews. So writing a blurb is so hard that I can do them in my sleep for my authors. I hire it out for my own stuff. Like I can't do it. So please don't feel bad if you're an author and your blurb sucks. It's okay to like get help, and you can do the research and all that. Like I even teach a class on writing compelling blurbs, but there is something about when you write your own blurb, the hamster wheel just like goes falls over, your hamster tumbles out. Like I cannot do it. So your blurb matters big time because keywords are invested into that blurb. Like you said, like, oh, medical. Okay, cool. Now I can, yes, categories on Amazon show us the genres. That's how we get to the book sometimes, right? But your blurb uses keywords, which is what people will search on Amazon. So that's a wonderful place for you to niche down as well. You could put in all sorts of cool stuff in there, like that's really specific.
Exactly. And I was reading on Twitter, and I might have to try this at some point once I actually do get my book out.
Yes.
Is someone mentioned in the romance kind of sub Twitter that they would rather see tropes.
Oh, they love tropes.
They love to know what kind of trope it is before they kind of want to know, like,
romance
they said,
wants tropes.
Yes.
And it's
and
so
they would
weird.
Love to know more about it, like what trope it is.
Yes, they almost kind of demand it because it's funny with tropes, a lot of writers are taught watch out for tropes. In romance, it's expected. So you nailed it. Absolutely figure out what your trope is and work that into the keywords that you use on Amazon KDP, work them into your blurb, whatever marketing options you're using. They really kind of demand those tropes, especially when you're talking about really avid romance readers. Listen, if you don't have a character kiss by a certain page, you just lost a reader. Like they're weird about it in a good way. They better kiss before page, like especially if it's erotica, but even romance, like I've seen avid readers complain because they're like, okay, it's page 50 and they haven't kissed yet, what in the world? And a lot of that comes with how did you position this book? So positioning, you and I could seriously have like a whole conversation alone on that. But you have to position your product correctly, because if you're doing clean and wholesome, okay, that's its own category on Amazon. Just so we're clear on that. It literally says clean and wholesome. If you're doing clean and wholesome and you start sneaking in a bunch of sex, congratulations, you just got yourself a ton of one-star reviews. They're going to be ticked. So you have to watch out for those things too. It's so funny, like romance readers just have a lot of rules that the writer has to be aware of. I mean, there's nothing wrong with breaking rules. That's what writers are great at. But when it comes to genre, the first question you ask me is like, this is the most popular genre. So how do they stand out? What do they do? Play by the reader's rules because you want to keep them and you don't want to tick them off. Trust me, you don't want to tick them off because I feel like I'm repeating myself, but there's something about like, okay, science fiction, I can break rules. Fantasy, I can break. Romance readers are like, how dare you? Like, what is this? Like, they don't like it.
Oh,
So
they are
you
very
right.
vocal and they will let you know, right?
Yes. Yeah. So
Exactly.
you nailed it with the tropes and the importance of and if you don't know, I've even seen books out there that will give you a list of tropes. Like, I mean, you can Google it, but I just saw a book the other day where it was like the trope Thesaurus. It wasn't Angela Ackerman, but it was like the trope Thesaurus. So go through that, work that into your story, and you may already have the tropes and you don't even realize it. So that's one of the first things I'm telling you: genre, trope, keywords, that you've got to nail that.
I've seen on the very brief descriptions, like of suggested things on Katie, like on Amazon, like sometimes they'll list the tropes in
Yes,
there.
they will.
And
yes.
That'll make me click on a book faster than anything. Is like,
yes,
ooh,
it's a check mark. You check it just like you would a children's book for ages, but it's a list of tropes. Yep.
And know your genre's rules. Like you said, like romance has kind of a strict rule set. Like
they do. They
you know,
really do. More so than I'll say it. I think more so than any other genre I've ever read. I really believe that. And it's because they are so I mean, sorry for the pun, but like they're so in love with this genre. So you can't come in and mess it up. You know, like they're really tight knit about these things. And if you really get down to it, why shouldn't they be? It's love. It's the universal thing that like we all experience or hope to experience at some point in time. You can't say that about science fiction, dystopian, high fantasy. You can say that about romance. The end of the day, romance is about love. And yeah, I can understand why there are so many rules, because it's so real. Even if it is fiction, it's so real to us as humans. And I think that if you want to stand out as a romance novelist, write what you are so in love with and so crazy about. And that's going to shine through in your writing. Listen, if you don't want to do the clean and wholesome and you want to make it so sexy that when I touch the book, I'm like, oh, that's hot, you know, then do that. Lean into that. Don't be afraid to write those things, because if you love it, it's going to shine through in your writing. It just is. And I think that's another method of helping you stand out. And we're only talking about genre right here. Like there's obviously the conversation of marketing and how you stand out as a novelist, as a short story writer, whatever it may be.
So how can you stand out and get maybe, like we were talking about, book ambassadors?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that you have to understand is you need to find a platform or platforms that you like. I don't know why so many marketers out there are saying, well, you need to be on Instagram because there's, you know, 1 billion plus active users on there. That's where you have to be. Like, it's mandatory. Okay, I love Instagram. I think it's a wonderful platform. But if you hate it and it just does not work for your brain, why would you spend your time using that as a marketing tool when I know that in a few weeks you're going to quit doing it because you hate it? It boggles my mind. So the first thing is you need to find platforms that you genuinely enjoy. If you're a Pinterest addict and you're over here writing romance, bring them together. Well, I don't know if that's going to work. You're right. Because if you have that attitude where you're constantly manifesting, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You're right. It won't. But if you manifest that I'm going to be a romance novelist who does we did romantic suspense. So romantic suspense, but Pinterest is like my thing. Great. Bring them together and dominate that area. There are so many. Pinterest is a search engine. Not only is it a search engine, but it's number one for evergreen content, meaning that if I wrote something in 2014 and it's on Pinterest and people search the right keyword and my content pops up, even though it was written in 2014, Pinterest sees it as evergreen and they're going to give that to the user. It's amazing. Whereas Twitter, there is no such thing as evergreen. You know, Twitter, it's gone. You know, it shows up and then it's gone. Pinterest allows you to have evergreen content. So find your platform and use it to, what am I supposed to pin about? That's the question I get all the time. What am I supposed to post about? What am I supposed to pin? What am I supposed to tweet? What am I supposed to do for video? It's easier for me to tell you what not to do, than it is for me to list all the things you can do. So and I feel like, you know, if you have any viewers who have seen me before, they're like, oh, I know what she's going to say, but it's documenting the process. If you don't have a published book yet, you are in the prime spot to document the entire process of writing, editing, rewriting, publishing, marketing, launching a book. Take your reader on that journey. That's how they become a book ambassador. A book ambassador is a loyal reader who fangirls over your book and tells the world about it, aka like the ultimate goal for somebody who hates self-promotion. So how do you get those though? You take them on the journey with you. My favorite example is David Mike, who wrote a memoir entitled Dishonor. He blogged that book for 2 years on a WordPress site. So like every week or so, you know, he had a new chapter about his life because he was arrested. He was dishonorably discharged from the army, and then he spent like about 5 years in Fort Leavenworth for drugs. So, and then of course, obviously the theme here is redemption. When he blogged about his book for 2 years, guess what happened? He grew and grew and grew and grew his tribe, his community, his platform, whatever word you're most comfortable with. So when he came to me for launching, he's like, well, if I launch this as a book, like, yeah, the book's gonna be different, you know, we're gonna have rewriting, we're gonna edit it, but why would anybody buy it? And if they've already read it, you know, they've been on my blog, they've read it. I said, they're not just going to read it. They're going to buy like several copies because it's their book too. They have been with you for 2 years during this process. And sure enough, his launch was a huge success. And people were buying several copies because they wanted to give it to their friends and family. They felt like they had a part in this book, and they did. So the same thing goes with you. If you're trying to figure out how do I get book ambassadors, well, you start by taking them on this writing journey. You share your writing space, you share excerpts, you share fails, you share days where you're feeling really pumped and when you're not. You share the proof copy, you know, like I did that this week with Savage Indulgence. I got the proof copy in, and so I showed that off. Even though it, you know, it's got the not for resale banner on it and the fake barcode, I want to take them on this journey with me. And it started a year ago in February because I just came up with the idea. So I just started talking about it on Twitter, on Instagram stories, telling people about it, putting excerpts out, showing them the weird research that I was doing. All of that matters. And then I'll sometimes get the rebuttal, who cares? And I love that one because I like to remind them that reality television has been going strong for several decades. So we're fascinated by people's lives. And I think that's also kind of like a way deeper psychological, let's go back to your childhood situation, where it's like, I'm not going to get into that. But if you have that much self-doubt, you know, and like been there, done that, that's a whole other conversation too. But getting book ambassadors, it's all about taking them with you. Take them through it all. Let them get to see you thriving and surviving all of it. Take them with you on that journey and choose the right platform to do so. If you are struggling, trying to figure out what platform is best, commit to a month. Like, let's say that you've heard about this app called TikTok that all the kids are on, and you're like, well, I don't know if that's for me. Okay, you're right. You won't know until you try it. So try it. Invest in 1 month. Just give yourself 30 days and see what happens. That's what I recommend doing. Just a few things like that, and really playing up the romance world. That's what you write. So have fun with it. Post about best kiss in a novel, best kiss in a movie, worst kiss. Have fun with those things. The things that are interesting to you are going to be interesting to other people. I promise. They really are.
And just to add on to that, spicy TikTok is a whole thing, guys. Like if you have not been down, TikTok. If you haven't been down TikTok, I mean, like the romance genre is like pretty profound.
Really big on TikTok. I knew TikTok was going to be big because I kept hearing a bunch of people hate on it. And so I immediately was like, hello, Instagram 2.0, because that's what everyone did with Instagram several years ago. I'm not getting on there. My business isn't going to be on there. And I was like, yes, perfect. Wow, so right? It was the same thing with TikTok. I was like, yep, I got to get on there immediately because everyone's hating on it. So that means it's going to be big. Boom. And sure enough, I have done pretty well with it so far. Like I just gained, I think like 100 followers overnight last night, just from a TikTok video I posted that was about self-publishing. That's it. And I'm just talking about what I would talk about with you. It's no different.
Well, and I like that you bring up that consistency, right? Like just try it for so long to see if you get any traction there.
I mean, I wrote an entire chapter in my book on consistency because I just was so in shock at how many people will try things and then they'll just stop immediately because it didn't do what they thought it should do in a certain time period. If you aren't putting in effort for a long period, it's always about the long game for me. I'm not interested in short anything. If you aren't putting in effort, then yeah, it's gonna fold. Like no one's gonna find you, no one's gonna read your stuff, watch your stuff, listen to your stuff because you're not being consistent with it. Well, I tried it for a while and I'm like, well, what did you post? I don't know, I posted a couple things. And I'm like, well, that's okay. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. It's gonna fail when you don't water your seed and give it sunlight and fresh air. Of course, there's gonna be no growth. So I think that's an individual thing though, too. That's like a whole other psychology conversation.
True. Well, and I always tell people stick with it, even if it takes, I hate to say it, but sometimes if it takes years and you don't have to like do it every day, but
not a lot of people want to do that. They hear that and they're like, I don't want to put in that hard work. And I'm like, you have to be willing to do what other people won't do.
Exactly.
You have to be the Michael Phelps of such and such genre as a writer. I don't know. I think, and again, like if you aren't the type of person who works and hustles, then it's probably going to take even longer, or it might not happen because you have to put your whole heart and soul into being a writer, into being a published author, into being whatever it is that you, and that can apply to anything. It's about working hard. You have to do what other people are not willing to do.
And one of my favorite examples of that actually is recently over like during quarantine and everything like that, somebody on TikTok made a TikTok about Ice Planet Barbarians. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is a romance like series.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
And she wrote it, I think back in 2014 or 2015, years ago. She's well into the series. She's like into novellas, like she's into like spin-offs and everything. And it went viral. And so everyone started like her sales, she said, just went through the roof. And
of course.
and like she said, it was kind of baffling. I read an interview with her that said that she was kind of baffled that she'd been writing for years and nobody had ever said anything. And then all of a sudden this TikTok just goes viral and then everyone wants to read it and make their own TikToks about it.
It's just timing. Timing is everything. I talked about this once. I call it the Wonky Donkey moment. The exact thing you're talking about. It's called the Wonky Donkey moment because the Wonky Donkey was a children's picture book that was published years ago. I'd have to go back and look at my research. I want to say 2009, and nothing really happened with it. It was published in, I want to say, New Zealand. Nothing really happened. Well, then fast forward several years later, and here comes this adorable Scottish grandma. And she posts, I think it's like her granddaughter, posted a video of the Scottish grandma trying to read the children's picture book, The Wonky Donkey. She thought it was so funny that she couldn't even get through the book. So the video went viral because it was hilarious. Well, that means everybody wanted the book. And guess what happened? You couldn't get it because they hadn't done another print run. And so when that went viral and everybody wanted the book, the publisher upped their print run from like 25,000 to 50,000, if I recall, because the demand was so high. And at that time, the author, Craig something, sorry that I can't remember, his website wasn't even working right. He wasn't really even on social media. Like everything changed for him overnight. That's the Wonky Donkey moment. And you have to be ready for moments like that because you don't know what's going to happen. You really don't. It could be years down the road, just like the TikTok person you're talking about.
Right. And like I
Yes.
said, because she kept writing the series, even though
As she should.
exactly.
Yes.
Just because she was passionate about it and she enjoyed it. Right. You just never know what's going to hit. And one thing I've mentioned to one of my other author friends is she said that she's seen reviews on YouTube of her book.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. You need like it, comment on it, repost it.
Email them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's BookTube is just like Book Talk. I found my stuff on there before, like very accidentally, because it's not really like you can tag the person, really. It's not really like that. So like you have the keywords and stuff. And I'm like, well, this is such a cool surprise. I had no idea this was here. And, you know, so I would reach out to that person and thank them. And you should do that. I mean, you would be surprised that there are many times when people are talking about your book and you don't know it, because maybe they're not super savvy to tag you or send it to you, or maybe they used your name as a hashtag instead of tagging you and you didn't know. So you can find your book a lot of ways. I've done that on Instagram and I'm like, oh my goodness, they didn't tag me, but they used my name as a hashtag. And here's pictures of my book from months ago and I didn't know it.
Sometimes those book ambassadors are already out there. You just don't know it yet. And
and also like, oh, you just made me think of something that's like a huge pet peeve for me. You want book ambassadors, but you're not willing to reply back to the 3 you already have on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and tell them thank you so much. You know, they you know what I'm talking about, the people who always comment on your stuff, they're always supporting you.
I was calling your cheerleaders, right? They're the cheerleaders.
Yeah, reply back to them. If you don't take the time to do that with the people that you already have, that's kind of a red flag for me. Like, you should be giving love to that one sole person that you have. Ellen Smith is a time travel romance novelist. She wrote Every Last Minute and then Any Second Chance. So it's a series. I love her books. I've got to edit them. Ellen Smith, Every Last Minute is the first one. She was my first commenter on my WordPress blog in 2013, who wasn't my mother. And by the way, I did reply back to my mom when she commented, but Ellen Smith was my first one. And I would always reply back to her. And then like when I moved from WordPress, she followed me elsewhere. We've always stayed in contact. And like, then I wound up editing her books. And then, you know, like yesterday, she sent me a DM, was like, oh my goodness, I love the cover for Savage Indulgence. It's so awesome. I love it. Like, that's years of knowing this person. You should give love to like the one commenter that you have, even if it's only one. Do that. Because if you're not going to do it now, if you do wake up one day and you've got 100 people commenting on your video or photo, you know, it's karma. You got to get back to like every single person that is cheering you on now. It matters, no matter the genre.
And that's the strongest marketing you can get is word of mouth. So you connect with those people, they themselves will go out and tell people about your book.
Oh, word of mouth has always been the number one form of advertising. It's just that it has a different face now. It's called social media. And that's how we do word of mouth. And so when I have authors who come to me and they say, I want to launch my book, I want to do marketing, but I'm not going to be on social media, I have learned to tell them that's your prerogative and I'm not going to pressure you, but I do want you to know that you need to lower your expectations for your launch. I have never been accused of not, like, I'm blunt. So because nobody else will be, so I'll do it. And I'll tell you, if you don't want to have a lifeline to your readers, that's okay. But you have to drastically lower your expectations for how many sales you're going to have. And I don't just mean during launch week, I mean for the future. And usually when I have that conversation with them, a lot of times they'll have a change of heart. Because most often it's because they were on platforms they hated. And so it just kind of sullied it for them. And I don't blame them. So now, you know, with word of mouth and all that, platform matters, all of those things play a huge role, but you have to be on social media if you want book ambassadors. It's just part of it. And I'm sure people will argue with me on it, and that's fine. But I feel like if you just delete the lifeline to your readers, you have no, like, your ghost online. That's so unfair to me personally, because I mean, there was a time when we couldn't talk to authors. There was a time pre-social media when, like, you couldn't see tweets of Stephen King with his dog Molly, aka Thing of Evil, that's her full name, throwing the frisbee. Like, that did not exist. And now we get to have that lifeline, and you can make a reader's day. Like, they will just fall in love with what you write, and of course they want to tell you, I love this and it was so great and I finished it in one night. You're leaving all of that behind, and I don't really understand the point of that. So usually it comes with, well, I hate such and such platform, there's too much such and such. Then get off it and get on one that you like, and do something that's enjoyable for you, whether it's, you know, Pinterest, YouTube, Discord, Clubhouse, an email newsletter, LinkedIn, like whatever it is, find your happy home and enjoy it and make it fun for you and your readers. Oh, and it's frustrating too, because sometimes I'll do like these also sometimes I'll do these really pretty photos of a book, and like I spend quality time on it and I write the review, and then I'll go on Instagram to tag them in it and they're not on there, and I'm like, no. It's so frustrating for me. So I just wish the authors knew how much they're missing out on with their readers when they do stuff like this. And I think deep down they know, well, this isn't really going to work, but pride, and I'm not going to get on social media, this newfound thing called social media. And it just kind of cracks me up. But as long as you lower your expectations, I mean, it's okay. Just be aware. Just, I mean, at least have that conversation with yourself. But I think for romance novels, I don't think it's really that much of an issue. From what I've seen, romance novelists seem to be pretty good about social media. I don't necessarily mean that like they automatically know what to post and what to talk about, but they seem to be on it pretty much. I usually see the no social media with different generations and nonfiction.
What would be a good way to, like, beside it, within social, either within social media or other ways, are there other avenues that you would suggest, like getting them or maybe drumming up attention? I work in marketing 9 to 5, and I know you do too, kind of with your job. And we sync marketing beats with like Valentine's Day, say we would usually push out more. So would that be a good way to find book ambassadors, or how would you?
I mean, yeah, I think so. First of all, any type of seasons, Hallmark holidays, even the funny holidays, you know, like National Squirrel Day. I don't know how that would relate to romance, and maybe I don't want to know, but whatever it is, you know, you can find those online. I've used them before, where you have a list of every single holiday in the US, and it's really fun to play up with those. I highly recommend that you look at those and then plan them out on your social media calendar. If you use something like Buffer, or even just your daily planner, if you're like me, absolutely work that into it. I want to say though that you should be doing it in spite of, like, it doesn't matter if you just one day are like, I'm going to do something because it's Valentine's Day, but then I'm not going to do anything else. Make sure that, again, it's consistent. I love the idea of any type of holidays, those funny holidays, the serious ones like Valentine's Day. Those are prime times to talk about romance. Yes. But I also think that if you want to have other methods of really getting more and more book ambassadors, you need to work with your genre and then add content for that genre. What's a good romance genre? And then I'll come up with something.
The medical fiction one, like the medical romance.
Okay, perfect. So medical fiction, let's say that you're trying to figure out, okay, yes, the holidays and all that, that's really fun, and those are great, but I need something I can do all the time. I you know, what about when I don't have the holidays to work with? You need to find an outlet that will work beautifully for you. So I always tell my authors that I'm talking bare minimum. You need one social media platform and then one content driven platform. So when I say a social media platform, I could mean Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, whatever, pick whatever you want. So one social media platform and then one content driven platform, meaning that you are creating content for your email newsletter or your blog or your YouTube channel or your podcast. So something that's very content driven. You need a bare minimum of those two things, okay? Because the social media is how you're going to get the traffic. Because how am I going to know about this content platform that you have? I need social media to do that. So once you have those two things, then you have a blast with the genre. So you're immediately thinking, well, what am I supposed to talk about if it's medical romance? Well, you just wrote a book about it. So like, obviously you have a lot of different options here. So within that, let's say that you did a YouTube series. That would be fun because then that would mean that you aren't stuck doing it forever and always. You can do different things. But let's say that you agreed, I'm going to do a YouTube series on medical romance. Okay, great. What the heck do I do next? So let's say it's a series. Let's say you're going to do 6 episodes on YouTube, 30 minutes each, 1 hour each. So many things you can do. First of all, the first one you can do is research. What type of research goes into writing a medical romance novel? What are you, a doctor? Well, no, I'm a writer. So how do you learn all this stuff? Oh, well, first of all, I'm blacklisted on the internet, probably. So you take them for a ride down research lane, document the process, make them a part of your world. The second thing you can do, talk about characters, show how do you determine what they look like. As a writer, what are you doing? Oh, well, I use Pinterest to figure out what they look like. I use Instagram. I use Google. I go old fashioned and I pick up magazines and look at celebrities. Great. Take me down that road for this, episode 2. The third thing, what in the world goes into, like when we're talking about medical romance, what goes into, like, if you have sex scenes, how do you write a love scene? Let's say that you do have sex in it. Take them down that journey. What did you do to figure out how to write your first sex scene? That's really fun. How did you write your first sex scene? Okay, well, there are lists out there. I have them, lists out there of different terms you can use for different body parts. So I got that and I used that as a thesaurus. Or I did actual practice every day and then wrote down in my, okay, honey, hold on, I gotta jot that down. Take them on that ride. That's a whole series right there. That's so fun. And then you can recycle your content. So turn them into transcripts and then turn them into blog posts, email newsletters, take the audio, turn it into a podcast, because I don't necessarily mean go all the way out, but like you can take for Squarespace, which is what I use for my website, you can upload just the audio because maybe somebody just wants to listen to it while they drive. Recycle your content. So if you can find a content driven platform for your medical romance novel and take people on this behind the scenes journey with you, oh my goodness, they would love to read this book now. They've learned so much about it and they've learned so much about you and it's interesting to them. That's one thing. That's one thing you could do. And there's so many other awesome things that you could do. You could do, collaborations on Pinterest where you have boards where people can collaborate with those. You can do giveaways. You can do, I love doing the this or that series where like it works really well on Instagram. So like this or that trope, and they have to choose which trope in romance they love the most.
Yes.
This kiss or this kiss or that kiss. Which one was the best kiss? Get them involved. All of these things are ways that you can get your community involved in you as an author whom they fall in love with first, and then they will read your grocery list. Like, that's it. That's what you do. It doesn't matter. Whatever you write, they're going to read it because they really have fallen in love with you. So those are just things off the top of my head that you could do that are so fun and easy. Like, they're fun. I think it's fun to talk about your research And I think it's interesting. Other people are interested in it too. Let's say your medical romance novel takes place in the ER. That means it's going to be busy and bustling, and like no one has time for anything except for maybe like a 2-second, quick kiss, like right around the corner where nobody sees it. Like there's so many fun things that you can work into this and show people how you come up with these things. It doesn't have, I think that's what people miss, is like, it's not about buy my book, review my book, check out my book. That nobody wants that. Take them with you during this journey, no matter what it is, and they'll feel a part of it.
Well, and some of the best examples I've seen one from you, of course, when I think it was, you said Savage Indulgence, right? Was the book?
Yes.
I know you posted it with the doggos and said like who posed best with it.
Yes, my little babies. Oh man, I exploit them all the time. I have 3 dogs. And so I'm always using them like, okay, let's pose. And I have fun with that because it's my life. Like there's other things that I post about that have nothing to do with writing or self-publishing. It has nothing to do with that, but it has everything to do with who I am. So I mean, those are things that you talk about too. It doesn't always have to be romance 24/7. If you want to talk about what you're cooking, great, talk about that. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
That was actually the other example I was going to use.
Oh, good.
Someone actually put in their newsletter and I devoured it. And I was like, I got to try this. A recipe that they actually included in the book. Like they talked about a certain dish that their grandmother made. So they made it for the hero. And then they included it in their newsletter. And I was like,
so cool.
Oh my God, I love this.
See, again, like you have the ideas. You're using them in your book.
Exactly.
Like you don't have to there's nothing to post about. There's so much to post about. I love that. The idea of recipes are great. People love that. And you could even do a whole segment on like a Valentine's Day. What would your character make for Valentine's Day dinner? That's an absolute blast. So what Knox Kevel, my protagonist in the Suicide Tree, would make for a Valentine's Day dinner for Jessa would be vastly different from what Joyce in Savage Indulgence would make for her husband Theo on Valentine's Day. Which I might even use that now that I'm talking. That might be kind of fun. Like you're talking about your characters and what they would cook for a Valentine's Day dinner. That's so fun. I think that's great. Use it. Get them. That's a wonderful way to get people involved. And you're sharing your book at the same time.
Another one I love too, another example just really quickly is like inspirations, because that tells me kind of where you are drawing your inspiration. And if you have a similar thing, like if you throw out, oh, I love Supernatural, and I kind of pulled some, I'm just like, oh, I definitely got to read this.
Yeah, whatever it is that you're into, it's so fun. This is so funny to me because like I said, I talk about so many different things, true crime, or these are the books I'm reading, or these are the, podcasts I'm listening to, whatever. I'll have people DM me all the time and they'll ask me, I need documentaries to watch. What do you recommend? And I finally just got to the point where I put it in my iPhone's notes and I have like a top 10 list and I just copy and paste it. Or I had somebody message me the other day. She's a children's illustrator and she said, I need something that's kind of like a rom-com to listen to. I need the audiobook. And she explained, like, I don't really do thrillers and horror. Do you have anything? I'm like, yep. And then I just started, she knew to come to me because I post so much about what I'm reading all the time. That's cool to me. Like, I don't have to, it's not always about making a sale, people. In fact, it shouldn't be. But like, it's fun to just be able to talk about, yeah, this is what I read too. Here's what I recommend. And then she went and got one of the books that I recommended. So have fun with those things. You should. That's part of your life. One of the easiest ways I can kind of finalize this thought is in many different conferences where I've taught, I've often had people ask me, I have a question. I write XYZ. I write memoir. I write whatever, but I'm also a Christian. Should I label myself as a Christian writer, as a Christian, whatever? And I always say, well, are you a Christian only on Sunday, or are you or are you a Christian all the time? Well, yeah, of course I'm a Christian every day. And I'm like, okay, well, are you a mom only on certain days? No, I'm a mom all day, every day. Like, and then the wheels start turning. And I'm like, yeah, you're all sorts of things, aren't you? You know, like for me, yes, I may be an editor, a book marketer, a speaker, but I'm also a wife, and I'm also a dog mom, and I'm also a true crime addict, and I'm also obsessed with squirrels, and I'm also an avid reader, and I'm also all these other things. That's what makes me me. So yeah, I am going to talk about those things, just like your listeners should. They should talk about all the things in their life that makes them who they are. I don't know how that one gets disconnected so often. I think it's a fear of rejection, self-doubt, who cares, those types of things. And you have to do it afraid. You just have to do it scared. Exactly. And then see what happens. There's something really beautiful in vulnerability. I believe that wholeheartedly. There's something really beautiful in putting yourself out there in moments where you're like, no one cares, everyone hates this, I suck, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, whoa, what happened? All these people are DMing me and telling me how much they appreciated my poem, how much they appreciated what my quick video. It's just part of it. You have to do things scared a lot of times.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing to learn sometimes, right? I
think you have to learn it every day. I don't think it's like you learn it once. I think it's kind of like an all the time thing. Mm-hmm. And you just have to keep pushing through. The easiest example I can give you is when I wrote my book of poetry, I was very, very, very transparent and very vulnerable. And I knew that certain people would read it and put some dots together, connect some dots, but I did it anyway because it mattered and it was important. And I knew that if I could be vulnerable about grief and heartache, it would give other people the opportunity to do the same. And it's really kind of funny because one of the poems in there that I was never going to include, because I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. Are people going to, that's the one that people have talked about the most. And I'm like, what? It's called When We Planned Your Funeral. And I really wasn't going to keep it because I'm like, well, this is so specific. No, it's pretty universal. And I was shocked to find how many people said that was the one that got them the most. And that was where I was probably the most, I don't want to say scared, but like apprehensive about it. We want to know it's okay to be vulnerable. So sometimes we need somebody else to do it for us so we can follow in their footsteps.
Are there easy ways though to be more vulnerable, you think? Like, or ways to show your vulnerability online?
No.
Or to people?
I don't think it's easy. That's the point. It's so hard. And you do it when it's hard. Like, I mean, you know, I'm just going to be me, but like, no, it's not easy for me to talk about losing a 17-year-old girl that felt like my sister. No, it's not easy to talk about when I saw her in the casket for the first time. No, it's not easy for me to talk about losing, having heartache after a breakup. These are hard things for me to talk about because I couldn't speak about them. I didn't know how to speak. So that's where writing came in. So as far as, is there an easier way to be vulnerable? No, I'm just going to be honest. I don't, that's the point. It's so hard and you do it anyway.
Exactly.
You do it anyway. And you put yourself out there and like, you just, if you have to click send and then just run away, like whatever you got to do, you can click post and then just close the laptop. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, there isn't an easier way to do it. I mean, that's outside of, speaking your truth and being honest and being transparent, but all of those are extremely difficult things to do. Why? Because, well, what if people reject this? What if the number one is what if so-and-so reads it? I like to quote Anne Lamott, who said, well, if they didn't want to be, I'm going to butcher it, but well, if people didn't want to be talked bad about, they should have behaved better. And I've always liked that. It's very hard. You do it anyway. You do it when things are just absolutely hard. And I think that's when it resonates even more, is because people feel that truth. It can be felt through a screen. You write differently, even if it's fiction. If you're pulling from real life, it's different. It reads different because you've experienced it. so it shines through in every word that you type. So yeah, you're right. Vulnerability is extremely important no matter the genre. And I think it can even go as far as like, you have to be, don't worry about what other people in your life are going to think when they read your romance novel. It's not for them. If you've got people in your life who are going to throw a hissy fit because you had a love scene, they're not for you. Just don't even go there, because you have a responsibility to bring your art out into the world. I don't care what genre it is. I don't care if it's a horror short story about a cannibal. I don't care if it's a romance novel set in the ER. Okay. You have a responsibility to put your art out into the world. And anyone who stops you from doing that is toxic. I like to call them poison ivy. And I've written about it because poison ivy, if you've ever had it, and I hope you haven't, it spreads really bad. And I've liked to explain that I think every creative has a poison ivy, mess outside in their backyard, so to speak. And when they touch it, they have a reaction. And then they go back the next day to that toxic thing, that poison ivy. They have another reaction. Now Benadryl and ointment isn't going to work anymore. Now your reaction is so bad that it's covered your entire face, your entire body. You're puffy. You can't even open your eyes. Now you've got to go to the emergency room. That is what happens when you have toxic people in your life, when you have poison ivy in your life, when they constantly bring you down and they don't support you, or they reject the things that you create. You've got to get rid of the plant and pull it up by the roots and burn it. Get rid of it, because it's going to constantly keep making you react, and it's never going to help you. It's always going to be poison. There's not going to be a time when poison ivy isn't poison ivy. And the same goes with the toxic people in your life. And that's a really hard conversation to have. But if you have people in your life who don't support you creatively, and I've had those, it's time to go. Time to uproot it.
Are there any like quick wins for authors to help them strengthen their book presence, either on Amazon or otherwise? And the reason I mention this, because I know currently in my workspace, we actually update our keywords. Pretty often.
That was going to be my first suggestion. Yay. I have a blog post on this. It's called 5 Freakishly Helpful Amazon Tips and Tricks for Authors. And honestly, I'll give you the link, but you should just use that as a study guide, because I think a lot of people know this now, but you can have more than 2 categories. You can have up to 10 categories. You request the extra 8 from Amazon Author Central. Your keywords are not just one word, like love, romance. Those are not keywords. So you need to learn how to do keyword strings, because you only have 7 on Amazon KDP. Now, of course, keywords can be put in your blurb. But those are really important things that you can do right now for free. Like no need to do ads or anything. You can do these things for free right now and get some more sales coming in if you can learn how to do keywords properly. So a good example would be, if I did, I don't know, let's say we'll go back to the romantic suspense. If I did romantic suspense, under 0 circumstances do you use the keyword romantic suspense. First of all, that's already a genre which you would be using, so you don't want to use that as a keyword. So instead, what you would do is you would say something like female sleuth. That might be something that's a little more specific, but I really like them to be strings, and it works a little bit better for nonfiction. But for this, it could be like happy ending women sleuth, or it could be like sexy like female detective, something like that. Use terms like that are specific to your book. And do spend time testing it. Go on to Amazon.com, use the search function and start typing in keywords. Amazon will already automatically give you a list of those keyword strings that people are already typing. So if you start typing in like sexy female detective, what else comes with that string? What are people more often searching? You might find that it's something actually different and more specific than that. So spend time on your keywords. Definitely do that. That's a quick win right there. Getting the 10 categories, that's a quick win. I definitely recommend that as far as like another quick win is going to book promotion newsletters and applying for them and doing them all within the same week. You just stagger them. So I recommend Fussy Librarian, Book Gorilla, Bargain Booksy, which is owned by Written Word Media. Book Rebel is great for romance. So is eReader IQ, ENT, which stands for eReader News Today, I believe. There's tons of them out there. That's a quick win for you. And a lot of these are very cost affordable. You're talking like $20. Sometimes they can go high, like up to 70 or 80 because of the genre of romance, but you're going to recoup that investment because it's going to be put on their newsletter. And then, hello, more sales for me. That's a quick win. And it's a wonderful investment because it's not just about the sales. It'll up your rankings during that week, as well as give you reviews in the future.
And that is perfect. So now that we've kind of like wrapped this all up with some amazing information, where can people find your blog and how can they connect with you?
So you can go to SHAYLARaquel.com, SHAYLARAQUEL.com, or you can just Google me. That's probably a lot easier. And I have more than just a blog. I also have how-to videos that are available for those of you who need help understanding how to self-publish your book on Amazon, or how to maybe format your manuscript before it goes to an editor. I have how-to videos. I have the pre-publishing checklist, which is what most people know me for. It's free, and it's really, I've been told it's more than a checklist. It's like its own book. And it helps people self-publish their books. So it teaches you everything you need to know in checklist format, because I'm obsessed with checklists. And of course, you can find me on Instagram, SHAYLA because Shayla Raquel was already taken, even though that person never uses her Instagram account, but that's a conversation for another time. And same thing on Twitter. Everywhere else, you'll find me, Shayla Raquel, Shayla Raquel. I'd love to get to know you and follow you back. The only other cool thing to know about me right now is that my book, Savage Indulgence, releases February 22nd. It is not romantic. So it is whatever the opposite of that is. So it might not be for you. But the fun thing is, if you're like me and you read a lot of genres, I hope you enjoy it. It is a short story, so you can read it in probably one sitting or two. And it is really gross and disgusting. And it was really hard to write and research. So, but it's, my mom said to me yesterday, she said, "I can't believe you wrote this." I was like, I know, right? So I'd love to get to know you guys and support you and encourage you in your writing journey. You can follow me everywhere pretty much. I'm not on Facebook anymore, but you can follow me pretty much everywhere.
Thanks so much to Shayla for being part of the podcast. And I hope you are making progress on your 2022 author goals so far. Whether it's slow or fast, if it's progress, it's a win. Book recommendations for this episode: The Trope Thesaurus by Jennifer Hilt and Savage Indulgence by Shayla Raquel.